All right, today we're breaking down commentator Victor Davis Hanson's argument that the whole narrative on climate change, one that's been around for a long time, is now being seriously challenged by some powerful new realities. Let's dive in.
So Hanson kicks things off by talking about this one dominant idea, something he says has pretty much shaped policy and how we all think for decades. He has a name for it, the climate change orthodoxy. He basically says that for the last 35 years or so, there's been this one single idea that became the accepted truth, that to save the planet, we have to make this huge shift away from fossil fuels and go all in on renewables. All right, so what is this orthodoxy he keeps talking about? Let's break down what he means by that.
So according to Hanson, the whole idea is that human activity, and specifically Western industrialization, is the main thing driving extreme temperatures. And the solution we've all been told about is this massive top-down change to our energy systems, getting away from oil, gas, and coal.
Okay, so now we get to the first big shake-up in Hanson's argument. He points to this one thing that he says is changing the entire game, and it almost feels like it happened overnight. The argument goes that after all these years of the same old energy debate, something totally new and powerful just exploded onto the scene, and it has an absolutely insatiable appetite for power. And that something is artificial intelligence. He says AI is the real game changer here. But listen, it's not about the code or what it can do, it's about the incredible amount of power it eats up. And he's not just making this up. He points to guys like Sam Altman, to pioneers of AI, who are openly saying, hey, we're going to need a crazy breakthrough level of electricity for this stuff to work, way more than our grids are ready for. And just how much power are we talking about? Well, the source claims it's a mind-boggling amount. Think about this, the equivalent of 100 brand new large-scale nuclear power plants, or, their equivalent in clean coal or natural gas. And not just 100 total, but 100 every single year, just to keep up with AI's hunger for energy. And this is really the first big crack in the old narrative, according to Hanson. The argument is simple. You just can't power this AI revolution with today's wind and solar tech alone. It's just not possible. And that, he says, shakes the very foundation of the whole green energy model.
All right, so it's not just about technology. Hanson argues there's another major force at play that's pushing back against the old climate goals, and this one is all about geopolitics. You see, he points out that instead of cutting back on fossil fuels, the U.S. has actually been ramping up production. We're talking a jump from about 13 million barrels a day to a new record of 14 million. And this, he says, has become a massive tool in the world stage.
And he lays out the strategy pretty clearly. Step 1, the U.S. pumps more oil. Step 2, this floods the market, which makes the global price of oil drop. And here's the kicker. Step 3, that hurts adversaries like Russia and Iran, whose economies depend on high oil prices. And at the same time, Step 4, it helps out our allies in places like Europe and Japan. So the argument is that national security strategy is starting to trump everything else. Okay, so the argument digs into two more factors now. What other big countries are doing and, well, the supposed hypocrisy of some of the movement's biggest names. He makes the case that China is basically talking out of both sides of its mouth. Publicly, they're all for cutting emissions, but behind the scenes, he claims they're on an absolute building spree, throwing up 2 or 3 new coal or nuclear plants every single month. The idea is they're trying to get a leg up on the West.
And there's this other point he brings up, an argument he says is coming from some developing nations. The logic goes something like this. The West caused the problem with its industrial revolution, so now the West owes them reparations. And because of that, they shouldn't have to slow down their own industrial growth.
And that leads him to his next point, which he calls out as straight-up hypocrisy. He starts asking these pointed questions, right? Like, he brings up Barack Obama and asks, look, if the oceans are really rising, why would you buy a massive multi-million-dollar estate right on the coast? And he keeps going, pointing to John Kerry flying around the world on a private jet while telling everyone else to shrink their carbon footprint. Hanson's whole point here is that when regular people see this stuff, this disconnect between the scary warnings and the personal actions, it just creates a ton of skepticism.
So, when you take all these different pieces and put them together, what do you get? Well, according to Hanson's argument, all these individual threads are starting to pull apart that big dominant narrative.
So let's recap the 4 big forces he says are challenging this orthodoxy. You've got the insane energy needs of AI,
You have energy being used as a weapon in geopolitics. You've got major players like China doing their own thing. And finally, you have what he calls the hypocrisy of the loudest voices. Hanson's conclusion is that when you mix all that together, that 35-year consensus, well, it's starting to crumble under the weight of this new reality. And so, the argument really leaves us with this one big question to chew on. When brand new, powerful realities, whether they're about technology or global power, slam into old, established ideas, can those old ideas really survive without changing?